Warning, the following video may contain sequences which some viewers may find disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Picture this: you own a food stall, selling things to make ends meet. And while sitting at your stall, a little girl comes up to you and buys a couple things. You know this girl, she's your neighbor's daughter. You enjoy talking to her because she was so bubbly, full of life. While asking how her day was, she just goes on and on about school, and how much fun it is. She tells you that when she grows up, she wants to be a doctor. Why? You ask curiously. She simply answers, because I want to help Mom live a better life. You give her a warm smile before wishing her luck. The little girl says thank you, with the brightest, most beautiful smile you've ever seen. See you tomorrow, she says, before running off with the food she bought. The rest of the day goes on, you close your stand, and head home. The next day comes, and you wonder if you'll see the little girl again today. Sadly, you don't see her. Another day passes, and you still don't see her. By the end of the week, you start to see missing person posters. And finally, fast forward a few weeks later, and she was found again. However, the sweet little girl you once knew was dead. Dead, stuffed into a box, and left to rot. That little girl's name was Huang Na. Huang Na was a Chinese little girl. Only 8 years old, she was a happy, fun-loving child. She had dreams of being a doctor actually, and her reason was because she wanted to help her mother out when she was older. You see, Huang Na, even at her tender age, could recognize and appreciate the sacrifices her mother was making for her. Huang Na's mother left China and came to Singapore. Her reason being, she wanted to give her daughter a better education. However, she had an 11-month-old daughter, and she had to bounce in between Fujian and Singapore to take care of her. She was Huang's half-sister. Huang had learned to live and function on her own. She was independent and street smart. In fact, prior to this tragic event, she had even taken a plane to China on her own. To everyone around her, she was a breath of fresh air. Now that we know who she is, we need to talk about what happened to her. How did she die? Well, the events leading up to her death started one day before her 8th birthday, September 27, 2004. Her mother had left for China. She was supposed to be gone for 2 weeks. So Na was alone. On October 10th, her mother called her and asked what she wanted for her birthday. A late gift is better than no gift after all. Na then asked for a computerized English dictionary. Also a pair of sandals. Na had apparently been walking around barefoot for a while. Sadly, that was the last time Na's mother heard her voice. That very day was the day she went missing. After the call, as she always did, she was playing, when a man she knew very well and was close to invited her into his place of work for mangoes. It was a man called Tuk Lung, a vegetable packer, and also one who had previously shared a flat with Na and her mother. Na trusted him, so did her mother. In fact, they were so close, Na would call him Shu Shu, which means uncle. We do not know what prompted what he did next, but he led her to the storeroom with a bag of mangoes, then he began playing a game of hide and seek with her. However, that was just a ruse. The fun and games ended pretty quickly when Tuk decided to strip her and restrain her with raffia string. After, he sexually assaulted her. Tuk didn't stop there. He then smothered her. He kept Na's breathing passages blocked until she went limp. And still he did not stop there. To make sure she was dead, he stomped on her and kicked her until finally packing her body inside several layers of plastic bags. Then he placed her body in a cardboard box, sealed with adhesive tape. It was the middle of the day. He couldn't risk disposing of the box immediately, so instead, he waited until her could borrow another worker's motorcycle, then he used that to return home. At about 8 p.m., he returned to the storeroom and retrieved the box. Then rode to Telok Blangah Hill Park and dumped it. An hour later, he returned the motorcycle that he borrowed. An hour after that, Na's guardian, Lee Xiao Chin, reported Na as missing. A nationwide search was conducted. Na's mother had returned 2 days after the disappearance, and she had joined in on the search, showing photographs of Na to strangers, hoping anyone would be able to tell her anything that could lead her to her little girl. Many civilians got involved as well, with people offering cash rewards of as much as 10 grand to anyone with information. Even in Malaysia, 30 taxi drivers places posters of Na on and in their vehicles. The police was busy as well, interviewing those who had any connection to Na. And this is where they met Mr. Tuk Long. You see, Tuk had been interviewed not once, but twice in connection to Na's disappearance, as many witnesses claimed to have seen him with her on the day of Na's disappearance. He had agreed to taking a polygraph test, and he claimed to have seen Na get abducted by 4 gang members. He even surrendered his passport so he could not leave Singapore, but he still somehow found himself in Malaysia. He was obviously fleeing. Members of Tuk's family tried to render aid, pleading his innocence to the press. Tuk's father stated that his son had called him and assured him he had not kidnapped the girl, and that he only ran from Singapore because he felt pressured by the police. Tuk's wife, yes, you heard right, his wife, who was living with his father at the time, echoed the same sentiments. They said Tuk told them the last time he saw Na, he gave her 2 mangoes and sent her on her way. His brothers claiming that Tuk was timid by nature, too afraid to even borrow money from someone, far less kidnap a child. Nevertheless, however, after almost a week and a half of running from the police, he surrendered and was brought back to Singapore on October 30th. Here, Tuk started to speak, and he claimed he entered Malaysia because he wanted to see his 14-month-old son, but he was unable to do so before getting caught. He then confessed to the police that he had accidentally strangled Na in a game of hide and seek. The following day, Na's body was found in a box measuring 50 centimeters by 40 centimeters by 30 centimeters in very thick greenery. The box had an uncanny resemblance to ones used at the Pasar Panjang Wholesale Center, where, yeah, you guessed it, Tuk worked. Upon opening the box, they found Na's naked body, forced into a crouching position. By the time they got to it, the body was so decomposed forensic tests needed to be done before it was confirmed to be Na. The park he dumped her in was a few minutes away from his flat, and less than half an hour away from his workplace. When conducting searches within the wholesale center, signs of a struggle was found within the storeroom where she was taken. Na's funeral took place on November 8th, where over 1,000 people attended. Many were strangers. A lot of the mourners brought things Na loved to place on her coffin, such as Hello Kitty toys and stickers. Her body was then cremated. This case does not end here. Now comes the trial. It was a high-profile case, which had many eyes on it to see the verdict on Tuk Long, the heartless man who killed a little girl. The prosecution then went through the sequence of events that led to Na's murder. Tuk inviting her to play, giving her mangoes, all down to the assault, murder and dumping of her body. Not only that, but even examining evidence, such as the box in which she was within, the tape used on that box, was found by forensics in the storeroom she was killed in. Within the storeroom as well, cloth fibers from both Na and Tuk was found, which leads you to believe, stated earlier, a struggle took place within. Tuk's statement that he gave the police after his arrest was presented as evidence as well. Honestly, he almost put things on a silver platter for the prosecution. I say this because in his statement, he claimed that what had happened was, he and Na was playing a special game of hide and seek. One which for some reason involved him tying her ankles with raffia string, with all the lights turned off. If she was able to untie herself before he finished counting and switched on the lights, then she wins. Already this is just, can someone explain to me on what planet is that a game of hide and seek? Anyways, I digress. He continued that he heard a loud thud, then he switched on the lights and started to panic because Na had hit her head fatally. He stated she was just on the floor having spasms with her eyes wide open and blood coming from the corner of her mouth. So, to put her out of her misery, he strangled her, then stomped on her neck 3 times, and after all that, he stated that he stripped and molested her with his fingers so people would think she was being raped. After which, he cut her clothing with scissors to make it look real. When asked why he fled, he said he was afraid of being hanged, because even he knew that no one would buy this pathetic excuse of a story. He claimed to have loved Na and would never hurt her, as he has a son of his own. But even that claim was shut down when several of Tuk's colleagues came to the stand stating they had seen him scolding her in the past, beating her as well to quote-unquote teach her a lesson. There were even occasions where he had tied her hands with raffia string before so she would not disturb those in the center while they worked. Na's mother took the stand and had stated there have been instances where he loses his temper when agitated, throwing things. And even recounted an incident where she claimed he had hit Na when they all went crab catching, stating she had cautioned him in the past for said behavior. Things were not looking good for Tuk, and rightfully so I may add. But Tuk still had cards he had not yet played. His defense included a psychiatrist. Can you guess why? If you guessed he was trying to play the mentally ill card, you guessed right. Tuk had not taken the stand in his defense, he was relying on the testimony of the psychiatrist, which tried to claim diminished responsibility for his actions. What is diminished responsibility? Simply put, as the name suggests, it is a legal doctrine that absolves one of part of the liability for his criminal act if he suffers from any abnormality of mind that could significantly diminish his responsibility in whatever criminal act he has committed. The psychiatrist stated that Tuk's irrational strangling of Na, who he considered a daughter, and his reaction to his death showed indicated that he suffers from schizophrenia. Therefore, he should not be held fully accountable for his actions. His family also supported this, saying that he would often act strange, smile to himself, say things such as he has spirits within him, going as far as bringing him to spirit mediums to see if they could assist in some way. However, the prosecution countered with their own psychiatrist. This psychiatrist stated that they have never seen a patient become mentally ill at the time an offense is being committed. Ordinarily, there are disturbances before which would lead to that sort of reaction. Besides that, Tuk was not mentally dull. Though Tuk had a low IQ, he was close to the mentally challenged bracket. He knew what he was doing. Nothing was an accident. He committed, concealed, then attempted to flee. Besides that, up until now, he has had no history of a mental abnormality. He may have had a low IQ, but that just means he's, let's just say, not smart. After all the evidence shown, he was sentenced to hang. Reason being, the meticulous manner in which he disposed of her body and clothing, using the cover of night to dispose of her, even a detail I had not mentioned earlier. Disposing of her clothes in a rubbish bin not monitored by cameras. All these things show that what he did was calculated. Of course, they appealed, but ultimately all attempts to escape the verdict failed. In the end, on November 3, 2006, Tuk Long was finally hanged. This entire case was heartbreaking to say the least. Na was just minding her own business, being a child, and she was so maliciously lured and killed by someone she trusted. Really, however, this isn't even all that uncommon when it comes down to sexual assault cases. Not the murder, obviously, but with sexual assault cases, more often than not the victims know their attackers. At the time of this video, this tragedy would have happened 20 years ago. Na would have been a grown woman by now. Probably a doctor, maybe with a family of her own, trying to give her own kids a better upbringing than she had, while helping her mother who sacrificed so much for her. But that just isn't the reality. The reality is, she was taken far too early by a wicked man. My heart goes out to her family. I really do hope that they have found ways to move forward in their lives, despite this horrible incident. If there's anything we can learn from this tragedy, is parents, please keep a very close eye on your kids. even among those that you trust, things can still happen. You might see a warning sign while doing so, a warning sign that could end up saving their life, or at the very least, spare them from trauma that a child really should never have to deal with. Or anyone for that matter. Tuk Lung is no longer around, but sadly there are others just like him, all around the world, still lurking. Even if you don't have kids yourself, you might be a civilian that ends up seeing something that could save someone's life. I'm sure those who saw Tuk Lead Na that day wish that they could go back and do something about it. Children are precious, they are impressionable, and they are vulnerable. Like I just said, people like Tuk still exist, so let's do whatever we can to make sure no child's fate echo that of Huang Na.